In the morning, there was a girl named Gu Haiyang. She stood before the court. Gu Haiyang was involved in a case with accusations of beating 3 female students and a waitress. Fortunately, Gu Haiyang received a light sentence. She was only obliged to attend anti-violence training for 1 day. After she finished the training, Gu Haiyang immediately approached the 3 students who had previously made her deal with the court. She hit one of them and threatened to hurt her body with a pair of scissors. Hearing that, the 3 female students immediately ran away. After that, Gu Haiyang went to her father's restaurant, which was also their home. At that time, the restaurant was busy. However, rather than helping her father, who was busy with his restaurant business, Gu Haiyang took some money and left immediately. When Gu Haiyang was about to leave, her father had an accident. His left hand was scalded with hot water. Afterward, Gu Haiyang and her young brother rushed their father to the nearest hospital. Gu Haiyang was very surprised when she saw the medical expenses for her father's burns that reached 10 million. She tried to use her father's insurance, but the insurance had expired. She had to pay in cash. Gu Haiyang also tried using a credit card, but she was also unsuccessful because her card limit had run out. She couldn't afford to pay, so she argued with her father. Her father asked Gu Haiyang to transfer the money and activate a new insurance for her. In the evening, Gu Haiyang looked very close and loving to her sister. They look so compact and often spend time together. When night falls and the 2 children get into bed, their father quietly left the house unnoticed by the 2 children. The next day, Gu Haiyang was taking heavy equipment training in class. She was the only female student. It turned out that Gu Haiyang was learning to be a bulldozer driver. Her teacher warned her that the job rarely had women. But Gu Haiyang still insisted on taking this training. Gu Haiyang didn't care that she was the only woman there. Shortly after that, Gu Haiyang got a call from the police station. It was Go Yusiak. He asked about the location of Gu Haiyang's father. Go Yusiak also informed that her father was involved in a violent case and escaped using a car. Hearing the news, Gu Haiyang didn't care and preferred to go to her workplace. When she arrived at the restaurant, Gu Haiyang asked her boss for permission to be 2 hours late on Thursday and Friday. She said that she would be attending training. Her boss didn't agree. Instead, she suggested to Gu Haiyang to quit her job. Gu Haiyang didn't accept and immediately made a mess in the restaurant. She asked for her unpaid salary to be paid right then and there. Then she decided to go home. At home, Gu Haiyang found her brother alone and hadn't eaten. Just as she was preparing food, a police car arrived. The police took her to the hospital. It turned out that the father was unconscious due to a car accident. After that, Gu Haiyang met Go Yusiak. He was the police officer who contacted Gu Haiyang earlier. Then he gave Gu Haiyang's father's belongings. Not long after, a man approached Gu Haiyang. He was an insurance agent. He came to pay for the car compensation and medical expenses of the victim who was hit by her father. Gu Haiyang didn't care about that. However, Gu Haiyang, who was unable to pay, argued with the insurance company. In the morning, Gu Haiyang took her brother to school. Gu Haiyang encouraged him. Later, she received a call from someone looking for her father, but she chose not to tell her father's whereabouts. After that, Gu Haiyang returned to her house. She saw her father's employees who were confused about whether they needed to open the restaurant or not. Gu Haiyang chose to leave and didn't care. She suggested to close the restaurant. But Gu Haiyang's suggestion made the employees angry. They said that they haven't been paid their salaries for the last month. Suddenly, Gu Haiyang's uncle came. He looked for Gu Haiyang's father. She told him that her father was hospitalized with burns yesterday. Hearing that, her uncle left immediately. Uncle abandoned his intention to give a gift. The next day, Gu Haiyang went to the training place. Then she got a mysterious phone call asking about her father's whereabouts. She said that her father was dead. Gu Haiyang asked the person to stop calling. Then she continued practicing driving heavy equipment. She didn't find it difficult to drive the heavy equipment. At night, Gu Haiyang returned to the restaurant. She was surprised to see 2 mysterious people inspecting the restaurant. They seemed to be reading a file about the restaurant's arrangement. Gu Haiyang tried to ask their identities, but they ignored her words. They thought that she was a child. In addition, a woman said about planning to take over the restaurant. Gu Haiyang was confused. She wondered why her father never told her about selling the restaurant. Then the woman replied that the restaurant didn't belong to Gu Haiyang's father. She also said that Gu Haiyang's father only rented the place. Then the men went up to the second floor. They even ignored Gu Haiyang. Seeing that, Gu Haiyang was annoyed. She grabbed a knife and threatened them to leave the restaurant. After that, Gu Haiyang felt frustrated about what happened to her. Gu Haiyang then went to the hospital. She wanted to get a direct explanation from her father about everything that happened. Unfortunately, her father's condition worsened. She checked her father's belongings. Then she activated her father's cell phone. She tried to call one of the numbers, but there was no answer from him. Suddenly, the doctor told her that her father had brain damage, which resulted in the weakening of the body's work functions. Then Gu Haiyang went to her father. She felt very desperate. Later, Gu Haiyang went to her father's accident site. She found some signs indicating that her father was hit. In the middle of that location, a truck suddenly passed by which almost hit her. After that, Gu Haiyang came to a conclusion. She then quickly returned to the hospital to see the victim who was hit by her father. There, Gu Haiyang found a man lying with severe injuries all over his body and a woman with minor injuries to her hands. Gu Haiyang pushed the woman to explain the chronology of the incident in detail, but before the woman could explain anything, the mother of the male victim came and chased Gu Haiyang away. Obviously, Gu Haiyang didn't accept that she had accused her and her father of causing the accident. Gu Haiyang made a scene. Then she was kicked out of the hospital. Outside the hospital, Gu Haiyang waited deliberately to intercept the woman, and before long, the woman came out on her own. Gu Haiyang followed and pushed the woman to tell the truth. However, the woman was unable to speak. Gu Haiyang then realized that the bandage on the woman's hand was fake. The woman was just pretending to be sick. Seeing this fact, Gu Haiyang immediately returned to the hospital. But she learned that the male victim was allowed to go home. Gu Haiyang told the staff of the hospital that the accident victim was lying. But the staff didn't want to hear it. After that, Gu Haiyang called the insurance company, but he ignored Gu Haiyang. The next day, Gu Haiyang was determined to get justice. She went to the police station and met with Go Yusiak. Unfortunately, Go Yusiak didn't find a solution. Instead, Go Yusiak looked into Gu Haiyang's father's past and found traces of his father's work with Choi Yang. Go Yusiak explained about the incident 18 years ago. It seemed that before the accident happened, Gu Haiyang's father made a scene at Choi Yang's office. Go Yusiak accused Gu Haiyang's father of being depressed due to debt. He also added that it was possible that Gu Haiyang's father committed suicide and crashed himself using a car. Even Gu Haiyang's father had activated insurance in Gu Haiyang's name before the accident happened. At night, Gu Haiyang searched for her father's files and belongings. Then she opened her father's cell phone. She found her father's last message sent to Choi Yang right before the day of the accident. In the morning, Gu Haiyang went to Choi Yang's office to seek justice. At first, she was ignored, but thanks to Gu Haiyang's stubbornness, she was finally allowed into Choi Yang's car. Inside Chiang's car, he quickly deduced that her father was a drunkard with a lot of debt. Choi Yang had lent his restaurant to her father, and now her father was in debt. Then Choi Yang wanted to take the restaurant for his nephew. Choi Yang also gave money for Gu Haiyang to move house. However, Gu Haiyang, who was not satisfied with the explanation, was left behind by Choi Yang, who went straight out for his political campaign. Then Gu Haiyang was expelled from the place. Gu Haiyang then received a call from her brother, who told her that their restaurant had been destroyed. In the night, Gu Haiyang went to her aunt's house for a temporary stay. But it seemed like the aunt didn't want Gu Haiyang to stay with her. Gu Haiyang asked her brother to leave, but the aunt prevented them. She told her that Gu Haiyang's father owed a lot of money to set up a restaurant. However, Gu Haiyang's father complained that the restaurant didn't earn much money. Auntie also said that Gu Haiyang's father had a debt of 5 billion. Gu Hai-young couldn't bear to hear her aunt's ramblings. She chose to go back to her restaurant. At the restaurant, she played her father's voice message. The message contained that Gu Hai-young's father asked for an extended time to pay the debt to Choi Young. But Choi Young didn't believe him and asked him to leave that restaurant. Gu Hai-young's father made a scene in Choi Young's office. Then when he was kicked out, Gu Hai-young's father accidentally hurt the female receptionist's arm. Then Gu Hai-young's father panicked. He ran away with Choi Young's car. Until finally an accident happened. Gu Hai-young went to Choi Young's office, but Choi Young wasn't there. After that, Gu Hai-young took a brochure. She called the number on the brochure. She pretended to be a reporter to find out his location. It turned out that Choi Young was attending a meeting at a restaurant. When she arrived at the restaurant, Gu Hai-young immediately searched for his whereabouts. After that, Gu Hai-young showed evidence of her father's voice message. Choi Young felt threatened by Gu Hai-young's presence. He told Gu Hai-young to leave. Even Gu Hai-young's father's cell phone was destroyed by Choi Young. After that, Gu Hai-young went to her uncle. He asked what his uncle brought to the restaurant when his father was in the hospital. It turned out that he brought money from Choi Young for Gu Hai-young's move. Then Gu Hai-young exposed Choi Young's bad behavior and revealed the truth of the accident. But her uncle stopped Gu Hai-young from taking revenge because they had no power anymore. Gu Hai-young ignored her uncle. Then she went to find Choi Young, who was campaigning. When she arrived at the campaign place, Gu Hai-young immediately slapped Choi Young. Then Choi Young's secretary took Gu Hai-young home. In the car, he said that Choi Young gave money for her move and gave her father a chance. At home, Gu Hai-young grabbed a jerry can and brought it to Choi Young's house. However, the security guard suspected Gu Hai-young. Then she managed to get in. She threw away the money that Choi Young gave her. Then Gu Hai-young poured gasoline over the money. But Choi Young's wife and the security guard prevented her. But she ran away. Later on, Gu Hai-young met 3 female students who had problems at the beginning. They gave Gu Hai-young a beating. They even hired a man to beat Gu Hai-young. Then Gu Hai-young's little brother came, seeing that they just left. At home, Gu Hai-young told her brother that dad won't live long. Hearing that, they both cried. Gu Hai-young remembered the order of her mother, who told her to look after her brother and her father. Gu Hai-young felt like a failure. The next day, they went to the hospital. They didn't find their father. It turned out that the doctor advised Gu Hai-young to sign the release of her father's life support. That meant Gu Hai-young's father was allowed to die. Finally, Gu Hai-young signed the letter. Then Gu Hai-young went to her aunt's house to leave her brother. Soon, Gu Hai-young was looking for a bulldozer to destroy her father's restaurant. Finally, the police came and tried to stop her. But Gu Hai-young wouldn't listen. Gu Hai-young felt vengeful. She wanted to destroy Choi Young's house. But unfortunately, it was difficult for Gu Hai-young to break the walls of Choi Young's house. Finally, the police gave a warning with shots into the air. As a consequence of her actions, Gu Hai-young had to serve an 18-month prison sentence. Finally, she was released from prison. After that, Gu Hai-young went to the man who was hit by her father a year ago. The man's name was Kim Eun-sok. She asked him what really happened. The man finally confessed that he was drunk with his girlfriend at that time. So he was accidentally hit by Gu Hai-young's father's car. Kim Eun-sok apologized for the incident, which resulted in the death of her father. Hearing that, Gu Hai-young was satisfied. She returned to living a normal life with her brother. Gu Hai-young worked as a food delivery person. One day, Gu Hai-young received a call from an insurance agent. Gu Hai-young received compensation for her father's accident of 1.8 billion. Finally, Gu Hai-young and her brother could live a new life with more peace of mind, despite remembering the difficult past.